reached the edge of the world. Today, folks, we're going to go down a familiar path, but in a completely new way. One of Dreamland's most interesting longtime guests is back with us. Pmh Atwater is a distinguished researcher of near-death experiences. She's a spiritual counselor. She is the author of 18 books, including Children of the Fifth World, Beyond the Indigo Children, and the New Children and the Near-Death Experiences. Her website is Pmh Atwater.hypermart.net. That's Pmh Atwater.hypermart.net. Now, PMH, it's really a pleasure to welcome you back to Dreamland.
It's fun to be here.
Well, I'm glad, because we're going to have a lot of fun today and a lot of mind-opening experience talking about the lifelong effects of near-death experiences in babies and children. She has a new book out called The Forever Angels, Near-Death Experiences in Childhood and Their Lifelong Impact, and it is a very moving and extraordinary story. PMH, can you start by telling us how you got started on this particular subject? And then we're going to circle back to where this started in your life at all, because you've really been doing this for a while.
Yeah, 43 years, Whitley.
43 years, yeah.
Yeah, a long time. It really got started in the 80s and 90s. You know, I began my research of near-death experiences in 1978, but it was mostly adults. And then it just seemed to me that it was time to take a really solid look at just children. So I did a lot of work in the 80s and 90s with kids. That's the New Children and Near-Death Experiences. That's the book that study is in. My research then was primarily, I was dealing with kindergartners up to the middle 20s and on. So in that original study, birth to the age of 15 years, but hardly any teenagers or tweens participated. It was mostly kids from 7 years younger. And there were really two large groups, birth to 15 years and 3 to 5. So therefore, I could go back and take the work I did then and use it in this study, because the Forever Angels is really a double study. And what I want to be able to say is, with this group in the 80s and 90s, they were all forward-looking. That is to say, they were either young or pretty young, and they were all forward-looking in their lives. With the Forever Angels, I did just the opposite. I went after people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s who could verify having had an experience between birth and 5 years. And I asked them this simple question. Did having a near-death experience that young, did it make any difference in your life? If it did, tell me about it. So basically, I was asking for essays. I went back and, asked a lot of questions and dealt with them afterward. But I was asking basically for the scan of their life. I wanted to know what their childhood was like. Mom and dad, siblings, school, sports, sex, drugs, alcohol, growing up, dancing, getting out with people, career, marriage, and finally being grandparents. So I wanted the full scan. And Whitley, nobody's ever done that before.
No, I know it. That's why you're on the air, because this is it's totally groundbreaking and unique. And folks, what you're going to find out today is also groundbreaking and unique, because you're going to have to put aside a lot of preconceptions about how people think about near-death experiences and what they report happens to them. And we're going to get into that more deeply. We're talking to Pmh Atwater. Her new book, The Forever Angels, which is a study of lifelong effects of NDEs in babies and children. And it's really groundbreaking. It's just never been done before. Her website is pmhatwater.com. That's pmhatwater.com. Now, PMH, I would like to circle back, because I'd like to know where kind of you come from in the sense that you've been doing this for over 40 years. Why did you start?
After I died.
Well, that's a good place to
simple
start.
Answer. In 1977, I was living in Boise, Idaho. I had a long history in the paranormal, altered states of consciousness, ghosty haunting, esoteric lore, all this kind of thing, because I was very, very curious. I was a secretary at the time, but I was very curious about these other fields, and I started Idaho's first nonprofit metaphysical corporation by the name of Inner Forum. I was dealing with people by the thousands, exercises, classes, conferences, easily 3,000 or more. And when I look back, I say to myself, there was always lots and lots of people. I never did anything small. Well, during this time, I sort of got tired of that, if you will, and I decided to become a bank manager. And I was taking classes with the American Banking Institute, believe it or not. And I got raped. I was raped, became pregnant, and all of the things that happened were because of the pregnancy and all, what happened after that. And then that was January 2, 1977, January 4, 1977, and again March 29, 1977. And later that fall, I had 3 major relapses, dealing also with total adrenal failure. So I can say, 1977 was exactly my year. And I had to relearn crawling, standing, running, climbing stairs, telling the difference between left and right, how to see properly, hear properly, and rebuild all my belief systems. So I had to, become a new person, I guess, or a different person. So I went through a lot of stuff.
Yeah, you sure did. I mean, what a journey. It almost feels like it's a journey you came here to take, or am I wrong about that?
I haven't really sat down with myself and looked at that. And that will be the subject of my next book. Because I had such an unusual childhood.
Yes.
And then I went through this, and then an unusual adulthood, and went through this. Always on the brink of the unknown, or the otherworldly, or the different, or life and death.
Right.
I was a cop's kid. I was raised in a police station. So Dad, inadvertently, I know he didn't mean to do it that way, but he did. He taught me how to do police investigative techniques. And Dad would always say, the body says more than the mouth does. So you're watching people's bodies. You're not just listening to them, and they're telling their stories. You're watching what they do with their shoulder. What are they doing with their face? What are they doing with their arms and legs? And how do they react if somebody walks by? So you're doing a lot more than just asking questions.
Yeah. it becomes much more intense than that, because there's something going on here that we can't see directly. In other words, when we're in life, we don't see it. We live our experience, but there's something deeper behind it. And, I want to start with the story of Jan and her brother John. And if you could, this is a very extraordinary story. I mean, they're all extraordinary, but this one in particular.
Yeah.
Tell about Jan and John and how they met and what is happening between them.
Well, Jan had a near-death experience. And she says, as a toddler, I often dreamed of my older and younger brothers. My older brother had died before he was born. It was not time for my younger brother to be conceived. Conceptually, as a toddler, I could not understand where either one of them were when I woke up each morning. I would see my older brother, John, at the foot of my bed before I went to sleep. And sometimes my younger brother was with me when I slept. I spent many mornings looking all over the house for the two of them, followed by many questions to my mother, and later found out that had a miscarriage before my older sister was born. The baby had been a boy. They had named John. This is verification of who I had seen. I was told I went through this annoying behavior of looking for my brothers for several years before my baby brother was actually conceived and born, and then she stopped this behavior.
Right, she did.
So that this was a child who could see the unborn, and I've run across this, Whitley, again, and back in the 80s and 90s, this was common. I'm still finding it. There's something about children. They have the ability to see beyond sight.
Now, she had conversations with John.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, tell us a little bit about what they talked about, because, I mean, given that John was not alive and she was, it's got to be something interesting for us there.
Well, Jan wasn't always happy in her life. What was going on with Mom and Dad. So they discussed the differences.
Yeah, he said he would have to, he had been sent to protect her and her sister.
Yeah.
And now he couldn't do it from the physical.
Yeah, so it was there for the younger brother to do.
Yeah, but he said he would do so from his spirit form and not in a bodily form.
Right, yeah.
Which is interesting to me because, of course, we all have guardian angel. Not everybody, but a lot of people have guardian angel experiences. Mm-hmm. I've had one, and I've often wondered who they were.
Well, in this case, it was her brother.
Exactly. It's her brother. And now, in the little illustration, it says that she remembers her birth. Can you tell us a little bit about what that meant? And how many kids remember their births?
Oh, there are so many that remember their birth. I can't really give you a percentage. I can just say there was a lot of them. For most of them who remember their birth, they see what's going on in the doctor's office or the hospital. They see what's going on with Mom and Dad. They see what's going on with other people in the hospital. Most of them complain later on that the delivery room where they were born was much too bright. They wish the lights had been lower. The people were really not that soft and caring about what they were doing. They wish the people would have been more careful and more caring. They talked about all kinds of things they wish had been different. So I put that in the book. Their preferences, what they wish had been done
at birth
by the people, by the doctors.
The birth experience is very noisy and hectic.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, a lot of people remember. Do people remember much of before coming into the womb, for example?
Some of them do. Some of them do. One of the cases I love, I really love this case, and that's Penny. She said, the most profound memory was my mother smoking. I remember getting excited in utero when she would feel anxious because I knew that I knew that bad taste was coming, and soon I would feel high. You know, doctors regularly still tell pregnant women, well, don't worry about smoking. You know, that won't have any effect on the fetus. Wrong.
Yeah, well, a lot of doctors don't say that anymore because
it's wrong.
It is wrong, absolutely.
And this little kid got high in the womb every time her mother smoked.
Now, one of the things that you mention here is that you rejected 15% of the interview opportunities because of the fact that the kids would slant the stories to fit the emotional expectations of parents. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You can never interview a child when parents are around or when any figure is around that represents to them some kind of hierarchy. You can't do it. You have to be alone with the child, and you can never be higher in eye. You know, our eyeballs. You can never be higher than their eyes. So with little tiny ones, you're on your tummy a lot of the time.
Yeah. Oh my.
Because if you're higher, then they automatically switch into this kind of adult mode where you have to be very careful what you say to them because they're gonna slant anything they say to fit the adult. So in order to have a more benign or neutral or open conversation with a child, you can never be above their eyesight.
Now tell us about the 120 people who wrote essays and how you got that to happen, which is a fascinating story. But don't tell us right now. We're going to go to a break for Free Dreamlanders, and then PMH is going to tell us this wonderful story and also about some of the things that they remembered, because folks, you know it and I know it. We all remember a lot of things that we don't bring into our minds and bring into words. And one of the things about a show like this with PMH is it's in time in hoping to spark your own memories so that you can discover these hidden things about yourself as well, because we all have them. We all do. PMH's book, The Forever Angels, Near-Death Experiences in Childhood and Their Lifelong Impact. Her website, Pmh Atwater.com. We're talking to Pmh Atwater, The Forever Angels. PMH has been on Dreamland a number of times. It's always been absolutely fascinating, and I was so glad to see that she had another book out. Now, PMH used a number of different research techniques in this book. One of them was to ask people to just write essays about this. And I'm mentioning this in particular, folks, because I have a feeling that if you were to sit down and just write about this for yourself, not for anybody else, it might be something is going to come up in you. Material will come that you don't even know you remembered. Am I right in thinking that, PMH?
Right. And also a lot of fear, and also a lot of just emotional baggage, if you were. They could never talk about it before. So many of these essays that I received, Whitney, were just so tear-stained I could hardly read them. One guy who had retired, he was about, maybe 66, 67. He wrote back a whole book, really, complete with photographs of his family, because he was so thrilled to finally be able to talk to somebody. He'd spent his whole life, he couldn't talk to anybody at all about what he went through. So when the door was finally open and he could say something, he went on and on and on and on. I finally had to ask him, please, I've really had enough. This was very kind of you, but no more.
Yeah. Now, but a lot of these essays were really remarkable. First, how did you get people to write essays? Why did you decide to get people to write essays instead of like interviewing or filling out a questionnaire?
Well, I just said, I said, tell me about it.
Tell you about it.
So, I put out on the internet that I was looking for this kind of people in talks. I sent out flyers, one-on-one. I did everything. It took me 3 years to gather everybody. They were kind of reluctant. People were reluctant to share. So I really had to keep at it and at it and at it. Finally got people to participate. And what I wanted to know was, did it make any difference in your life, having had an experience this young? If it did make a difference, what difference was it? And so I was very specific. I wanted about childhood, siblings, school, so forth, all, up into adulthood, grandparenthood. Did it make any difference in your life? If it did, tell me about it. And they did. Did they ever?
Yeah. And what they told you was really, and who they were. This is, one person was blind. One was autistic. 3 came from families that practice voodoo.
Right.
One of them claimed to be a double walk-in. And I'm going to ask you about walk-ins and soul merge and things like that in just a moment. But folks, as you know, a walk-in is a soul that comes into a body after the body is alive, and the other soul that is in the body leaves. In other words, bodies are not, like Anne said after she died, she said, Whitley, bodies are community property. And, this is not something we think of because the outer being doesn't necessarily sense this directly. And that the soul is there gathering experience and maybe finishes with what this body has to offer and goes on to someone else. But tell us first about a double walk-in, what that means.
This particular individual, and it was a woman, and I personally interviewed her 3 times. How do I put this into words? She had a very troubled childhood. That was her death. Then she had a walk-in experience, that is to say, the soul she was left. Another soul came in. Then that soul later on left, and yet another soul came in. So in that sense, a double walk-in.
Yeah, because souls are not actors, folks. You, the ego, the outside person, is the one acting life. Souls are watchers. Go ahead.
And that's what happened with her. And because of that, she had a very unusual life. She did a lot of counseling with other people. She became a sort of like a minister, and was very dedicated to helping children who had problems in their family, who had problems in school, who had problems with drugs and alcohol. So she became like a therapist.
Now, the reason I brought this up might surprise you a little bit. I knew that your biography is unusual in that you kind of broke off with your past and went into banking, of all things.
I know, of all things.
I also know that souls come in order to gather experience, and different souls may want different kinds of experiences. Do you think you might be a walk-in?
No.
You're sure?
Absolutely. I can say that with no hesitancy. What I have found with many people who claim to be walk-ins, and with myself, you become more of what you were before. It's like you expand. You become more powerful. You become even greater than you were before. You don't leave the body. You don't switch with any other kind of soul. You're still the same soul, but that soul evolves and expands and gets bigger, and that's what happened to me, and that's what happened to a lot of people I met and interviewed and watched and studied. That's what happened with them, too. So this idea of walk-ins, as you described, works with some, doesn't work with others.
Gosh, it's a big, complicated world, and I'm going to complicate it a little bit more now, because another thing that is mentioned is soul merge. First, let's talk about soul merge among people, but one specific individual mentioned soul merge with an alien, and I found that.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah. What?
That's the first time I came across that one.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah, she said that she merged into the alien and became the alien for a while before she came back to herself. So I really don't know how to describe that any further than what she did, but she feels that's what happened. And, what else can I say?
Well, I mean, that's kind of enough,
Yeah.
Because
and she had proof, proof being a little rock or a little stone that had that the other one was carrying, and she found that before and after. And she felt that little stone was proof to her that this really happened.
And why was that true? Why did she feel that?
That's hard to answer.
Yeah, I thought it was. It's hard to get out of the book, too.
The stone wasn't there before the merge, but yet she saw it in the merge. And she played with it and kicked it during the merge. And then when she came back to her regular body and was her regular self, whoa, there was the stone.
Well, you know why I brought that up in particular is this. In the close encounter experience, stones have a significance. There are a lot of people who have experiences with stones that are left as confirming indications that somebody really was there. I am such a person. I had a stone like that thrown into my backyard after a close encounter experience, which I have kept to this day, and that happened in probably 1989.
Yeah, well, that's what happened to her.
Yeah.
That's what happened to her.
Exactly. So, folks, what I'm saying is it's an unusual thing, but it does happen, and it is part of this experience. Okay, PMH, what do you think is going to come out of something like that?
Oh, peace. Absolutely peace.
Yeah.
This is what I recommend to anybody who had a near-death experience. I don't care how old you are or how young you are. Make your book. You're writing it for yourself. Make your book. Have a cover. Name your cover. It's by you. Then inside, describe your experience. If there was a newspaper clipping, put it in your book. People make comments. Put the comments in the book. Make your book, because no one can validate your experience but you. You're the sole proprietor of your story. So write it down, make your book. And I have heard from so many people that say that they're, especially in the field of near-death studies, that making their book was almost like having another near-death experience. It was that deep, it was that intense, it was that special. But in doing it, they were able to sort of set themselves free, or at least have that point of understanding and relief and peace come to them.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing to do. It really, really is. And it's very worth your time to spend an hour with it, see what happens. Even if you don't have any real memories of any experiences, maybe they will come up and maybe they won't. Maybe you'll write about something else entirely. You don't know. And we shouldn't try to dig. We should let it come, and it will come. If you start writing, it will come. Something from you that is deep within you that wants to speak to the you of the surface. And
absolutely. I can verify that.
Right, and to help you understand who you are. Okay, now, there's an area that really fascinates me for a personal reason, which is the area of womb memories. I have memories of going into my mother's womb and being in it, and memories of being born, which were not, by the way, it was just noisy. And I remember mainly how bright it was. And the first thing I saw, the doctor peered at me, and I still remember how frightening, how horrifying his eyes were. He was like I don't know what, but I mean, if there's anything, any birth memory that I mean, we must have traumatic birth memories, I think. I think too many births are probably too violent. But anyway, let's talk about the womb. Doctors tell us that it's not possible to remember anything in the womb. Why do you disagree with that?
Certainly because of the testimony of people. So many, hundreds and hundreds of cases that I've come across. And I've quoted also a number of doctors who have found that to be true, and would hypnotize the mother and the child, and get this information. So yes, the child while in the womb can hear, can see. In one of my books that I wrote, the Big Book of Near-Death Experiences, I've got a section called Womb with a View.
Right.
Because so many of them could see and hear outside the womb and describe it after they were born, and of course shock everybody. But and there are many cases also of those who were there at conception. They saw their mom and dad. Yes, they did. And when the egg was fertilized by the sperm, they saw that light flash there's something about that light flash that occurs at life. They never forgot it.
Though that surprises me. I never heard of that before. Cases where that happens. I guess, having having secret
Whitley,
knowledge like that of your
proved.
parents must be kind of weird.
Yeah, hey, Whitley, it's now been proved by scientists at Northwestern University. Their findings came out, I think, last year. They were able to prove scientifically and through photography that whenever anything comes into life, is fertilized, comes into life, any kind of egg and sperm, doesn't have to be humans, there is fireworks, there is a light flash, and that light flash can be photographed, and it always happens. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
Science has now proved it.
Light is such an important part of all of this. And if you think about it, light is incredibly important in human culture because there have just been 4 incidents of light which have changed the world. Moses seeing the burning bush. Muhammad seeing the glowing angel in the cave. Zoroaster coming across the glowing being who said he was the God of the universe while he was wandering in the hills looking for enlightenment, and he got it. And of course, Paul on the road to Damascus. So light, these things changed the world. Light.
And there's more.
And there's more to tell us.
And there's more. Science has now proved scientifically that whenever anything dies, there is a light flash. They call it a death flash. But there's light. And again, it can be photographed. Anytime anything living dies, there is light. So we come in with light, we leave with light. Always there is light.
What does this light mean to you?
It tells me that there is more than a body, there is more than a personality, there's more than Whitley and PMH talking right now, that there are souls. I call them souls. You can call them whatever you want to. I call them souls. That we are light. That we are more than we could ever know or conceive unless we get into prayer and meditation or have enlightening experiences. Isn't it interesting that we call these revelatory experiences enlightening experiences? Yeah. It tells me that light's at the core.
Exactly. This is actually a place made of light because, as Einstein says, what physical world is energy slowed down. And the energy is, of course, light.
Right. Yeah.
So that's what the world is. Anne, I think I've mentioned this to my listeners before, but Anne and Shirley MacLaine and I used to sit out at on the deck at a restaurant in Malibu called, I'll think of it in a minute. In any case, we would sit out there and have a long, slow dinner and talk about the light and the dark. And Shirley always felt that the dark was disturbed by the light, that it had broken its long contemplation and silence, and it really did not want the light. And Anne was arguing always that the light was what belonged here, and that the dark had to accept its presence. Because her motto was have joy. And it was fascinating to listen to these conversations between these two women. It was really a treasure in my life. So, but what do you think about the light? What is it?
Well, look in my research with adults and children.
Yeah, I know I have.
was able
I have
to
done that,
show,
and that's why I know you have a great
again
answer.
and again and again, that there are three lights. They are, especially children talk about this. There are three lights. There's this raw, powerful light, has no color. Then there's the black light or dark light. Many of them see purple tinges in it. And there's something about this light that is so loving and so healing. It's like a sanctuary. And then there's this really bright light. Some people call it a white light. Might have a little gold or silver in it. There's something very intelligent and knowing about this light. It can talk to you, and you can talk to it. And so the children say, well, that bright or white light, that's father light. That dark or black light, that's mother light. And that raw, piercing light, that's God's light. And father light and mother light come from God's light.
That's very interesting, the idea of that light splitting into two parts, which is very Zoroastrian, by the way.
Well, look in the book.
Yeah.
There's that case of Star.
Tell us about it.
She's the drawing is there. She says, what I remember pre-utero was a room with black living walls. There were no words exchanged, only thoughts. We were near the end, and I was preparing for my final choice. By that, she means her choice to be born. And she drew that picture of being in this black light. And there's something, Whitley, there's something exquisite about that black light or dark light, especially with children. What I found with the greatest jumps in intelligence afterward were those who had their near-death experience in the black light.
And you know what? It is such an ancient idea that knowledge is what we find in darkness. Gosh, I remembered the restaurant, folks, by the way. It's Jeffrey's on the Pacific Coast Highway. And if you ever want to go there, try to get them to sit you way out on the deck overlooking the Pacific. That's where we sat. And maybe you can pick up the conversation with your own friends. In any case, it's a beautiful idea. I wish you had been with us in PMH. I
would love to have been there.
You would have added so much of value to that conversation because this is a big, beautiful idea. We're talking to Pmh Atwater. Her new book, The Forever Angels, Near-Death Experiences in Childhood and Their Lifelong Impact. Her website, pmhatwater.com. Really well worth going to because there's a lot of thoughtful stuff on the website, and not to mention material about the book. And, you get this book, and one of the things that it does is you go through it, and it tweaks your own memory. Because one of the main things this whole website, Unknown Country and Dreamland, are about are enabling us to find ourselves and who we are. And PMH's work is important in this respect because she is a real skilled people finder is what I would call you. Now, I want to talk about a case that, I want to talk about that a little bit later. I want to talk about some surprises. Now, one of them is the chapter 7, some surprises. We talked about the primary light and the dark or black light. Now, why do you think it would be that children who have cardiac arrest experiences, 85% of them have NDEs?
Right.
That surprised me.
Yeah, that's been proved. Yes, scientifically. That's true. I can't tell you why, but what I can tell you is they're put in these life or death situations, and that's where near-death experiences come from anyway. And these children who are in these dire situations sometimes die and are brought back. And they tell us all these stories. Abuse issues, drownings, birth difficulties, high fever. These cases come from trauma. But maybe it's because of the heart itself. I don't know.
It's strange synchronicity conjecture. Because I was in an email thread I'm on this morning. We were just discussing the question of whether or not the heart is actually the seat of emotions rather than the brain, the seat of consciousness rather than the brain. And someone was talking about this Sacred Heart of Jesus being such an important part of the Catholic tradition. And I was thinking to myself, gee, I wonder, I know PMH knows a lot of this, so I wanted to bring it up. What is the heart's place in the I don't want to say supernatural, but in the higher level of being?
Well, I would say it's a place of power. It certainly has more energy than the brain does, has more energy than anything else in the body has. It's a place of power. It is our power horse. The heart will pick up what's going to happen to you before it happens. This also has been shown scientifically. Maybe 30 seconds before, maybe a couple of minutes before. How?
Yeah.
I don't know. But scientifically, it knows. The heart knows. I think it's because of it, maybe its circumference of energy that goes out far more than the aura. Maybe it's because the heart is in tune with other levels. Maybe it's because of the fact that it is a place of power. Yes, we can say it's loving. Yes, we can say it's unconditional power, but unconditional power is power. Unconditional love is power. So I would say it's the place of power.
I want to go back to the dark light again. We touched on that, but we didn't discuss it enough because it's basically a very new idea. At least it is for me, and I have a feeling probably for many of my listeners. Can you tell us a little bit more about dark light and the kids who see it experience it?
Well, they get all cuddly and warm and excited when they talk about the dark light. Because that dark light, they call it the mother light. It's that light that so penetrates and holds and protects and loves. Yes, that white bright light is loving, but it's more a father light. It's more that very strong protective light. But the mother light, that darker black light, that's cuddly soft. And the kids love it. They love being in it. They love being with it. They love talking about it afterward. And it is connected to healings. In the book, the Big Book of Near-Death Experiences, there's a drawing of a man who was taken to the hospital with surgery due the next morning, very serious surgery. So he's praying and praying and praying. He had his near-death experience before the surgery. And during his experience, there was this huge, huge ball of black light that suddenly appeared, and it came to him, it enveloped him, and then it left. The next morning, the medical people found that the tumor that they had to remove had vanished. It was gone. He did not need surgery. There's something about this black light that's very healing, and the kids talk about it too. It's like sanctuary. It's where they go for help.
Yeah, it's very interesting because it's so like the womb.
Yeah.
It is the mother light, as you said, the female light, and the feminine is associated with
it's like
a
that
dark
ultimate
place
womb.
of discovery.
Well, hold on a minute here, Whitley. If we're talking about that kind of thing, please note that in most of your cosmic consciousness studies, in most of your illumination studies or experiences or people that talk about it, once in a while you'll find someone who talks about the void. Now, I visited the void in my second near-death experience. I did not know what it was. But in my experience, it was a place of utter, complete darkness. Yet, there was the presence of all color, all sound, all life. Everything was there, yet nothing was there. It was completely empty, totally empty. Yet the presence of everything was there. And I noticed while I was there that there really was something there. And I call it shimmer. There was a presence of shimmer because everything that had ever existed or ever would exist was there. But there was nothing there except this presence of shimmer. Maybe you don't know this, but most women, when you're making a Jell-O dish and you know put it out on the plate, just before you touch that Jell-O, just as you are about to touch that Jell-O, you feel this sense of shimmer. Nothing's happening, but you feel it and you sense it and you know it. Shimmer. That's what it was when I was in my second near-death experience and I was in the void. There was this shimmer. And I kind of wonder, this for the first time with you, I'm kind of wondering with these children who have dark or black light experiences, and to them it's very loving and huggy bear and healing and wonderful, if maybe they're experiencing some of the void. I don't know.
Maybe. You know, one of the things I learned from Anne after she died is it's really hard to be evil. And most people aren't. I mean, they may do things that are wrong and bad, but real evil that marks a soul takes work. and that's why I don't think we really see, I mean, there are negative near-death experiences, yes, but you're talking about this void, this rich presence, which has a shimmer in it, which really, really resonates with me. She said also that underlying reality is a yearning, and this yearning is the love that upon which the universe is built. It is what we have to understand if we're going to understand gravity, is that yearning and where it comes from.
Right. And these are not negative experiences. These are not distressing or fearful experiences.
No, we haven't talked about any today on purpose.
These are the experiences of little children, of babies, of toddlers, and they experience a black or dark light, and that light to them is love and warmth and healing and cuddling.
Mother Light.